A man vanished on a grocery run, but his apartment door kept unlocking long after police believed he had left town.
Not once.
21 recorded entries, all made with a master credential. For 15 years, detectives were told the access system had malfunctioned, and those entries did not exist.
Then Caleb Doran was found.
August 21st, 2025. A drainage crew cut into an old service road behind the abandoned Marlow Bend paper mill. Beneath the pavement was a filled maintenance trench. Inside it, they found human remains wrapped in contractor plastic.
Dental records identified Caleb.
And the adhesive on that plastic preserved a second person's DNA. I want to play the first report that aired after investigators confirmed his identity.
Authorities say the remains recovered beneath the former mill road belonged to Caleb Doran, missing since May of 2011. Detectives are now reviewing apartment access records that may show repeated entries into Doran's home after his disappearance.
So who kept going inside?
That is the question. Because whoever opened Caleb's door was not checking on an abandoned apartment. They were removing evidence, managing his mail, and trying to control what the missing man appeared to be doing. This is the Cold File. I'm Marcus Reed. I spent 22 years working homicide and cold cases with the Los Angeles Police Department, and I've seen a lot of bad records. What happened at Quarry Pines was different. Somebody did not lose the truth. Somebody edited it.
And I am Dr. Christy Hart. Call me Christy. Marcus, there's something especially violating about a person using the authority of a building to stalk someone inside his own home.
Because the lock stops meaning anything.
Exactly. Caleb documented the intrusions. He changed what he could. He complained to the people who controlled access, and every attempt to make himself safer told the offender how frightened he was and how close he was getting.
I'll give you the stalking behavior. But my first read was still financial. Caleb reviewed fraud for a living, and days before he disappeared, he identified loan applications connected to vacant apartments at Quarry Pines. That's not background noise, that's motive.
It is motive. I'm not convinced it explains the intimacy.
21 entries will buy you a lot of intimacy.
Or reveal it.
Marlow Bend sat outside Dayton, Ohio, close enough for commuters and far enough away to have its own exhausted economy. The paper mill had once held the town together. By 2011, part of it was abandoned, the rail yard was shrinking, and warehouse work had replaced a lot of union jobs.
And Quarry Pines?
3 long, 2-story apartment buildings on the south side of town. Brown siding, narrow patios, outdoor stairwells, and a leasing office built into what had once been a model unit. Rent was cheap. Tenants included nursing students, warehouse employees, young families, and people rebuilding after divorces or layoffs.
A high turnover community.
Very high. At least 11 units were officially vacant that spring. Some were being repaired. Some had been empty for months. Management still held mailbox keys, card credentials, tenant files, and copies of identification from prior leases.
That's a dangerous concentration of access. Empty addresses, old personal data, and nobody consistently checking who comes and goes?
Which is why I initially looked outward. If you're running identity fraud, vacant units give you controlled delivery points. Applications go out under somebody else's name. Cards and loan documents arrive at an address where no legitimate tenant is watching the mailbox.
Caleb Doran was 34. He worked as a fraud review specialist at a regional credit union. What did that actually mean day to day?
He looked for inconsistencies in account activity and credit applications, duplicate addresses, reused telephone numbers, income claims that did not match deposit histories. On television, fraud analysts tap a screen and announce they've found the criminal. In real life, Caleb spent hours comparing boring details until the lie showed itself.
He was good at boring details.
Apparently very good. His coworker said he stayed late to help elderly account holders untangle scams, even when the loss technically belonged to another department. He'd walk them through closing an account, freezing credit, and documenting every contact.
That tells me he did not treat embarrassment as evidence of stupidity. Fraud victims often feel ashamed, and Caleb understood that shame is exactly what scammers rely on.
He also kept his own life orderly. Same route to work, groceries most Saturday evenings, laundry Sunday morning. He was saving for a small house with enough room for a woodworking shop.
Was he close to buying?
Not yet. He had a separate savings account labeled house and shop, and he was adding a few $100s whenever he could. His mother later said he'd already bought a used table saw that was stored in a friend's garage.
That hurts. He was building the future in pieces.
The official missing person report was opened on Monday, May 16th, after Caleb failed to arrive at the credit union, but the first warning in the file should have been dated more than 2 months earlier.
March 7th.
Caleb went to the Quarry Pines leasing office and reported that somebody had entered his apartment while he was at work. Nothing expensive was missing. A kitchen cabinet had been left open, and a stack of mail had been moved from one side of the counter to the other.
Small enough to make him doubt himself.
Right. That's common in unauthorized entry complaints. The person knows something is off, but there's no smashed lock, no stolen television, no obvious point of entry. Patrol officers hear, "My mail moved," and think, mistake, roommate, landlord inspection.
Caleb lived alone.
He did, and the leasing office told him maintenance might have entered to inspect a reported water leak. No work order was produced. Caleb accepted the explanation at first.
Because it came from the official channel.
Yes. He trusted procedure. That became a vulnerability. The person receiving an access complaint is supposed to preserve records, identify every authorized key holder, and give the tenant a concrete answer. Quarry Pines did none of that.
Was the door forced at any point?
No, the lock worked. Whoever entered had a valid credential or a copied credential. There's nothing mysterious about that. Quarry Pines used an electronic MasterCard system for management and maintenance access. A portable encoder could copy or issue cards, and administrator-level entries were supposed to be logged on the office computer.
Who had administrator access?
The owner, Miles Ketter, the property manager, and the assistant manager, Janelle Armitage. Maintenance workers carried MasterCards, but they were not supposed to have permission to edit or export the database.
And Janelle knew Caleb personally.
Briefly, they'd gone out several times the previous year. Dinner, a movie, a weekend afternoon, at a home improvement show. Caleb ended it after a few weeks and told friends there was no dramatic breakup. He felt they wanted different things.
How did Janelle describe it?
As casual and fully resolved.
Maybe it was. A prior dating relationship is not proof of fixation, but it changes how I hear the apartment complaint. She knew his routines before she ever had to consult a tenant file.
It changes the interview plan, absolutely. You separate her role as employee from her role as former dating partner. Early detectives did not do that. They treated her almost entirely as the helpful assistant manager.
Helpful people can shape a case very efficiently.
Especially when they decide which records you see. On March 18th, Caleb started photographing his apartment before leaving for work. Cabinets closed, mail arranged, bedroom drawers aligned. It sounds excessive until you understand why people do it.
He needed an external memory. Not because his memory was failing, but because someone kept creating ambiguity.
Exactly. He was establishing a baseline. That day he also found a blank access card sleeve under his sofa. The sleeve was the kind Quarry Pines used when issuing replacement cards, but there was no card inside it.
That's more than moved mail.
It is, but not as much as you'd think in court. A paper sleeve is transferable. Anybody could pick one up in the leasing office. There were no usable prints. By itself, it did not identify who carried it into the apartment.
Behaviorally, though, the pattern is sharpening. Entry without theft, movement of personal objects, repeat access. The offender is gathering information or signaling control?
Or searching for something.
Fair. What would a fraud operator expect Caleb to have at home?
Notes. Printed applications, address lists, maybe a work-issued storage device, although the credit union said Caleb was not permitted to take customer files off-site.
And did he?
Not customer files, but he wrote things down in a personal notebook, using partial names and unit numbers. That notebook later became one of the most important items in his apartment.
There's also a distinction between searching and lingering. A thief who wants one document gets in, finds it, and gets out. A control-driven stalker returns because access itself is rewarding. They learn the victim's habits, they test whether the victim notices. They may move something small just to prove the boundary isn't real.
That's where you and I split. I do not discount the stalking, but I think it began because somebody learned Caleb had flagged the fraud. The operation created the surveillance.
I think the personal surveillance was already available, maybe already tempting, and the fraud gave it urgency. That difference matters because it changes the suspect pool. You're looking for someone tied to the applications.
Correct.
I'm looking for someone who knew Caleb well enough to notice when his anxiety changed his routine.
Both pools could overlap.
They usually do in the ugly cases.
On April 26th, the overlap became visible. Caleb flagged 4 suspicious credit applications. Different applicant names, different employment claims, but all 4 were connected to addresses at Quarry Pines.
Occupied apartments?
No, vacant units.
There it is.
2 applications used real identities belonging to local residents. One was Quarry Pines tenant Derek Moen. The other identities were also assembled from legitimate personal information. Birth dates, prior addresses, partial employment histories. Somebody had access to more than names on mailboxes.
Lease files.
That was one possibility. Stolen mail was another. The applications sought personal loans and revolving credit. Not huge amounts individually, but enough to produce tens of thousands of dollars if the approvals stacked.
Was Caleb allowed to investigate outside the credit union?
No, and that's important. He could flag applications, preserve internal data, and escalate them to the security manager. He was not a police officer. He had no authority to knock on doors or accuse tenants.
Did he stay within that boundary?
Mostly. But Caleb lived at the same complex. He recognized the unit numbers. Once that happened, the fraud stopped being an abstract work problem. It was operating around his home.
That would intensify the documentation. Every moved envelope now looks connected.
And perhaps it was. In his notebook, Caleb wrote down 4 vacant unit numbers, partial applicant names, and one sentence. Mail is moving before people do.
Sharp.
That sentence told investigators he understood the scheme. Mail was arriving in apartments before any legitimate tenant moved into them. Somebody with access was collecting it.
Who did Caleb tell?
At work. Grant Lyle. Grant sat in the same fraud review unit and had access to internal alerts. On May 12th, Caleb told him he believed somebody at Quarry Pines was using vacant apartments as mail drops.
Grant immediately becomes interesting.
Very. A coworker who knows what Caleb found could warn the people behind it, destroy records, or be part of it. Detectives later examined Grant's system activity and financial history.
What did Grant say Caleb sounded like?
Focused, not panicked. Caleb told him, "I think somebody has been in my place looking for the notebook." Grant advised him to call police rather than the leasing office again.
Good advice. Late.
Caleb had already made the management complaint. There was no documented patrol report from March. Whether he called police after speaking with Grant was disputed. Marlowe Bend had no recorded dispatch connected to Caleb's address before he disappeared.
But we know he told someone else.
A neighbor named Evelyn Shaw. She moved out of Quarry Pines before detectives completed their canvass, so they never interviewed her in 2011. 14 years later, she found an old voicemail backup while transferring files from a damaged computer.
Let's hear Caleb.
He left this message 3 days before he vanished.
Evelyn, it's Caleb from next door. Somebody's coming in when I'm not there. Have you noticed a woman by my patio gate, maybe waiting there? Don't confront anybody. Just call me if you see her again.
He says again.
Which means either Caleb had seen the woman more than once, or Evelyn had previously mentioned her. The surviving message does not tell us which.
And to be precise, there's nothing uncertain about how she got near that patio. Quarry Pines had open exterior walkways, and the gate could be reached from the parking lot. The door entries were made with an electronic credential, human access recorded by a machine.
Correct. Creepy, but mechanically simple. The failure was investigative. Evelyn's forwarding address was available through the leasing office, but the original canvas ended before anyone followed it.
Was the woman described?
Only generally in Evelyn's later statement. Medium height, dark coat, light-colored hair pulled back. She could not identify a face after 14 years.
Still, that message gives us Caleb's own interpretation. He did not think this was only a mail thief. He thought a woman was watching his patio and entering his home.
It gives you theory ground. I'm not surrendering the fraud link.
I wouldn't let you. Not yet.
Saturday, May 14th. Caleb followed his usual routine. He stopped at Bell's Market after 7 in the evening. A checkout camera showed him alone, wearing a gray rain jacket and carrying one reusable bag.
What did he buy?
Coffee, eggs, sandwich bread, canned soup, apples, detergent, a package of mailing envelopes, and a new door chain. The transaction closed at 7:42.
A door chain.
It was one item among ordinary groceries. The receipt ended up in his kitchen trash, which told police he made it home. The groceries were put away. The chain was still boxed on the counter, unopened.
So he was trying to add a barrier that management's card couldn't override.
Probably. A chain only works while you're inside, but yes, it would have stopped somebody from opening the door fully while he was home.
Did anyone see him arrive?
A tenant remembered a car resembling Caleb's near his building around 8, but she couldn't swear to the date. Rain reduced visibility, and Quarry Pines had no functioning exterior cameras.
Of course it didn't.
The checkout footage and receipt were the last independent proof that Caleb was alive. Everything after 7:42 depended on records that another person could create, alter, or manipulate.
His telephone?
It connected to a tower covering Quarry Pines at 8:19. At 9:14, a text went from Caleb's phone to Owen Pritchard, his former boyfriend. It said Caleb needed space and would call in a few days.
Did that sound like Caleb?
Owen said no, The wording was formal, and they hadn't planned to meet that night. But police initially treated it as evidence Caleb was alive and withdrawing voluntarily.
That's a dangerous leap. A device can move without its owner, and a text proves only that someone used the device.
Exactly. No location data precise enough in 2011 could place the phone in Caleb's hand. It was switched off before midnight and never recovered.
What about his bank accounts?
No cash withdrawal, no hotel charge, no fuel purchase. But his Bell's Market loyalty number was used again later, and that second transaction would eventually turn an ordinary grocery receipt into evidence of staging.
Later when?
After Caleb was already dead. We'll get to exactly how investigators established that. In 2011, nobody even requested the full loyalty account history.
That's brutal. The trail existed.
It existed in a retailer database, outside the homicide file, waiting for somebody to ask the right question. At 6:30 the next morning, a delivery driver found Caleb's sedan behind a closed tire warehouse near State Route 49. It was about 7 miles from Quarry Pines.
Hidden?
Not carefully. The car was visible from the loading area, but screened from the highway by the warehouse. The doors were locked, Caleb's wallet was inside the center console, his telephone and apartment keycard were missing.
That feels staged to be found, but not immediately.
I agree. Whoever left it wanted distance between Caleb and Quarry Pines, but not permanent concealment. The steering wheel, gear selector, and door handles had been wiped. The first technicians found no useful fingerprints.
Wiped cars are never as clean as people think.
This one wasn't. Beneath the plastic housing of the passenger side seatbelt latch, technicians found a small blood deposit. At the time, there was no body and no known injury to compare it with. Testing confirmed the blood belonged to Caleb.
Passenger side.
Yes. That mattered more than the original team understood. They proposed Caleb might have cut his hand while reaching across the seat. 15 years later, the autopsy showed he had suffered 2 fractures at the back of the skull and a deep incised wound to the neck.
He was bleeding heavily when somebody put him in that seat.
That is the forensic conclusion. Caleb did not voluntarily drive his car away. He was transported as an injured or deceased passenger while another person drove.
Could one person move him?
Caleb was average height and build. It would have been difficult, but one adult could drag or maneuver him, especially with a vehicle nearby. There were no defensive blood patterns preserved in the apartment, so police couldn't establish where the attack occurred.
Which means he may have been lured somewhere else.
A vacant unit was one possibility. Quarry Pines had empty ground floor apartments where a body could be moved through a patio without crossing the main walkway.
And whoever had master access could choose the room.
Or somebody connected to the fraud could have been given a copied card. That's why I'm not ready to make the apartment employee the center of the case.
Marcus, 21 home entries.
We know that now. The detectives then had a paper printout claiming there had been no master entry into Caleb's unit after March.
Supplied by whom?
Janelle Armitage.
There it is.
Careful. Supplying a record is not proof she falsified it. In a proper investigation, you seize the computer, acquire the raw database, photograph the connections, and contact the vendor independently. The Marlowe Bend detectives accepted the printout.
And the raw database?
Missing from the case file.
That's not a technical malfunction, that's a broken evidence chain.
Exactly. Janelle said the master key system had been corrupting timestamps for months, so she exported what she believed was accurate and printed it for police. Nobody verified that explanation with the card system vendor.
Was the terminal actually defective?
No mechanical defect was ever documented. The reader chirped when a valid card was presented, and the local system stored a credential number with the date, time, and door. The problem wasn't how the machine recorded entries. The problem was what Janelle chose to export.
But the original investigators didn't know that yet.
They didn't. What they did know was that Caleb had an angry former boyfriend.
Owen Pritchard.
Owen and Caleb had dated for nearly 3 years. They had argued days before Caleb vanished because Owen asked to borrow money, and Caleb refused. Detectives recovered several texts from Owen's phone.
How angry!
Angry enough to change the direction of the whole case. Owen wrote that Caleb was judgmental, that he acted superior, and that he would regret shutting people out. On the surface, the messages gave police jealousy, financial resentment, and emotional volatility.
That is a real suspect package.
Then, Owen lied about Saturday night. He first said he stayed home alone, no witness, no receipts, no calls. That fixed him there.
What was his explanation for Caleb's text at 9:14?
He said it confused him because Caleb had already made his position clear. Owen replied twice and received no answer. When police asked whether he drove past Quarry Pines, he said no.
Did they find his car on camera?
Not near the apartments, but they learned he hadn't been home either. A debit card charge placed him at Northline Lanes earlier in the evening. When confronted, Owen admitted he had been drinking there.
Alone?
He refused to name the person with him.
So now the ex has motive, ugly texts, a false alibi, and a missing witness he won't identify.
That's what the original detective saw, and once they saw it, every access failure at Quarry Pines became secondary.
I understand why they pressed him. I don't understand why they stopped pressing the building records.
Tunnel vision rarely feels like tunnel vision while you're inside it. It feels like prioritization. You have an ex-partner who lied, sent hostile messages, and argued over money. You push that lead because it can produce an arrest quickly.
Unless the lie is covering something else.
Which Owen eventually claimed. He said he had relapsed after months of sobriety and spent the night drinking with a married co-worker. He lied to hide both the relapse and the affair.
Convenient.
Very. The co-worker did not come forward for months. By then, detectives thought the two of them might have coordinated their story.
Did the bowling alley still have footage?
One camera recorded the lanes on a continuous overwrite cycle. Investigators believed the relevant video was gone.
Believed?
They missed a second archive used for injury claims. That camera covered the seating area, and years later, a civil records search recovered a copied segment from the night Caleb disappeared.
Marcus was Owen on it?
He was. But what that footage showed, and exactly when it showed him, would either clear Caleb's most obvious suspect or leave enough time for Owen to reach Quarry Pines before the blood ended up in the passenger seat. The copied footage began at 8:53 that Saturday night. Owen was visible beside the married coworker he had refused to identify. He remained on camera through 11:37, when an employee escorted both of them toward the lobby.
That covers the critical window.
It does. Northline Lanes was 26 minutes from Quarry Pines in good weather. Even if Owen left immediately, he could not have sent Caleb's 9:14 text from the apartment complex, attacked Caleb, moved him into the car, and returned to his seat without disappearing from the camera.
And he never disappears?
Twice he walked out of frame for less than 3 minutes. Once toward the restroom, once toward the bar. Not enough time to leave the building. A second camera caught his car entering the lot at 8:21 and remaining there until almost midnight.
Owen lied, but not about murder.
He lied because the truth threatened his sobriety, his job, and the coworker's marriage. Those were powerful motives for deception. They just weren't homicide motives.
That distinction is everything. People expect innocence to sound clean. Real innocence can sound evasive, selfish, even cruel when someone is protecting another's secret.
And detectives have to test the lie without assuming what it conceals. Owen's false alibi justified scrutiny. It did not justify letting the Quarry Pines evidence sit untouched.
Did Owen ever explain the messages about Caleb regretting shutting people out?
He said he was drunk and angry because Caleb refused to lend him $1,500. He also resented that Caleb had started dating again. The language was threatening, but investigators found no prior violence between them, no attempts by Owen to enter Caleb's apartment, and no connection between Owen and the fraudulent applications.
So the emotional behavior fit reactive anger, not organized surveillance.
That's how I read it. Owen sent his hostility directly to Caleb. The apartment intruder operated covertly, preserved access, and manipulated records. Different behavioral signature.
I agree, and the car staging took composure. Wiping touch points, keeping the wallet inside, removing the phone and keycard. That wasn't a drunken confrontation followed by panic.
No, it suggested somebody had a plan for Caleb's absence.
But Owen stayed the headline suspect.
For years, he was the red herring that consumed the original investigation. His relapse and affair became easier for police to understand than an identity theft operation hidden inside an apartment management system.
What did that fixation cost?
Time first. The best chance to seize the leasing office computer disappeared. Tenants moved, mailboxes were rekeyed, vacant units were cleaned, the card system vendor rotated its server storage, and the trench behind the mill remained exposed long enough to search, until it didn't.
Caleb's family was searching while police concentrated on Owen.
His mother, Denise Doran, drove in from Columbus. His sister organized volunteers around the warehouse, the river access roads, and the abandoned mill property. On May 21st, the family made a public appeal outside Marlow Bend Police Headquarters.
I want to hear Denise.
This was recorded 7 days after Caleb bought those groceries.
Caleb, if you can hear this, please call your sister or call me. You do not have to explain anything. And if someone knows where my son's car was before that warehouse, please tell the police. He would not leave us wondering like this.
She knew his silence was wrong.
Completely wrong. Caleb had no history of disappearing, no unexplained absence from work, and no indication he intended to abandon his savings or the house he was working toward.
Yet the 914 text gave investigators permission to imagine withdrawal.
For a few days, yes. Then the blood result came back. At that point, this should have been treated as a probable homicide with evidence preservation at the center.
Those flyers went through every complex around Quarry Pines, didn't they?
Grocery stores, bus shelters, credit union branches, the rail yard, and several churches. But the physical search was uneven. Marlow Bend had limited personnel, and the Ohio State Assistance Team prioritized locations connected to Caleb's sedan.
Meaning the warehouse.
The warehouse, drainage ditches along State Route 49, and nearby industrial lots. The abandoned paper mill was searched visually, but not excavated. The mill property covered dozens of acres, with collapsed sheds, old utility corridors, fill piles, and several maintenance trenches.
A body could disappear there without being far away.
Especially if the offender knew which ground was already scheduled to be disturbed. Fresh fill attracts attention. A maintenance trench expected to be filled does not.
That takes local knowledge.
Or access to somebody who had it. Quarry Pines used small contractors who also worked industrial properties around Marlow Bend. The black plastic later found around Caleb was a common reinforced sheeting sold to property managers, roofers, landscapers, and maintenance crews.
So the plastic wasn't unique.
No, its evidentiary value came from the adhesive, the soil, and eventually the DNA, not from the brand. The next suspect was Grant Lyle, Caleb's co-worker in fraud review. Grant knew about the vacant unit addresses by May 12th. He knew Caleb kept a notebook, and he had access to internal alerts showing which applications were under review.
He could have exposed Caleb to whoever ran the scheme.
Or he could have been participating. Detectives considered whether Grant was steering fraudulent applications around internal controls and whether Caleb had caught him.
Did his finances show anything?
No unexplained deposits, no debt crisis, no contact with the applicants, and no access to Quarry Pines tenant files. His credit union activities showed he opened the suspicious applications only after Caleb assigned him a secondary review.
What about the night Caleb disappeared?
Grant said he was home caring for his mother, who was recovering from hip surgery. Family alibis are weak unless there's independent support. In this case, an overnight home health nurse arrived shortly before 8 and remained until 6 the next morning.
She saw Grant?
Repeatedly. He helped transfer his mother from a chair to bed, signed medication paperwork at 9:12, heated soup around 10, and answered the door when a pharmacy courier delivered a brace just after 11.
That's layered corroboration.
Strong enough to clear him as the killer. His home internet connection also accessed the credit union's secure employee portal at intervals consistent with his statement.
Could he still have warned someone?
Theoretically, but investigators found no relevant calls, messages, or financial relationship. Grant volunteered Caleb's statement about the notebook and the mail drops before police disclosed either detail publicly.
That could be guilty knowledge.
It could, or it could be exactly what Caleb told him. You test it against records. Grant's account remained consistent, and no evidence tied him to the vacant units.
I'm shifting slightly toward you here.
Slightly.
Enjoy it quietly. The notebook makes the fraud pressure immediate. Caleb wasn't merely uneasy about his apartment. He had mapped 4 delivery addresses and told a coworker. If the operator learned that, the scheme was about to collapse.
That's my point. The offender didn't need emotional obsession. They needed Caleb silent before his security manager contacted law enforcement.
But somebody had already entered his apartment in early March. The 4 applications weren't flagged until late April.
Caleb may have seen suspicious mail before he formally connected the applications.
Maybe. Or the offender's interest in Caleb preceded the operational threat.
You're assuming the March intrusion belonged to the same person.
Same valid access method, same apartment, same moved mail, followed by repeated surveillance. It would be irresponsible not to consider continuity.
Consider, yes. Assume, no.
There's the precinct table again.
That's where assumptions get expensive. The third suspect entered the case through one of the stolen identities. Derek Moen lived at Quarry Pines, and his name appeared on 2 fraudulent applications.
Prior record?
Burglary conviction, drug possession, and several probation violations. He'd also been accused of taking mail from a former roommate, though that charge was dismissed.
Police saw a familiar criminal name and stopped asking who benefited.
Pretty much. Detectives believe Caleb might have confronted Derek over the applications. They spent days trying to connect Derek's associates to the tire warehouse.
Was Derek even free?
No. He had been booked into the Harrow County Jail on May 9th for violating probation. He remained in custody through the night Caleb disappeared.
That should end it.
As the hands-on killer, yes. But detectives still considered whether he directed somebody outside the jail. Calls were reviewed, visits were reviewed, no connection emerged.
And the applications?
Derek hadn't submitted them. The telephone number was not his. The income was invented. One application used a previous employer listed in his old Quarry Pines lease file.
There. Somebody harvested his identity from management paperwork.
That became the later interpretation. In 2011, investigators described him as a likely participant whose identity had been used with permission.
Based on what?
His record and their expectation that identity fraud involved people who already committed conventional crimes.
That's bias doing paperwork. Derek was another victim, and his criminal history made him easier to blame than protect.
Agreed. A prior conviction can guide questions. It cannot substitute for evidence.
Did Derek report missing mail before his arrest?
He told a probation officer that replacement bank cards never arrived. The officer assumed Derek was making excuses for failing to pay supervision fees. That note sat in a county file and was never cross-referenced with Caleb's fraud review.
Another trail in another building.
That's how cases fragment. The credit union had suspicious applications. Probation had missing mail complaints. Quarry Pines had vacant unit access. Police had a blood-stained car. Nobody built one timeline.
Caleb was trying to...
Yes. His line, "Mail is moving before people do," was the cleanest summary anyone produced.
And whoever entered his apartment may have been trying to find out how much of that timeline he had written down.
That gives your stalking theory a practical purpose.
Control behavior often has a practical purpose. The offender can be emotionally invested and materially motivated at the same time.
I'll concede that much, but the repeated entries after Caleb vanished still look more like cleanup to me than personal gratification.
Cleanup doesn't require 21 visits unless you're either incompetent or doing more than cleanup.
Or managing mail that continues arriving over several weeks.
Good point.
That's the vacant unit operation again. Whoever was inside Caleb's home may have been intercepting notices, checking for his notebook, and creating the impression that he returned intermittently.
Was anything taken from Caleb's apartment?
His phone, keycard, and possibly one page from the notebook. The binding showed a torn edge between two address lists, but Caleb may have removed it himself. His computer remained. So did cash, jewelry, and the unopened door chain package.
The chain staying there matters psychologically. The offender sees the attempted boundary and understands Caleb never got to install it.
It also tells us the interruption happened quickly after he returned from Bell's Market.
Did police determine whether the apartment door had been opened that night with a MasterCard?
Not from the paper log Janelle supplied. According to that document, Caleb's own credential opened his door at 8:11. No management credential appeared afterward.
His missing card could explain that entry if someone else had it.
It could, but the groceries were put away. The simplest reading is, Caleb used his own card at 8:11, entered alive, and was approached afterward.
Approached how? Knock at the door.
Possibly, or a call from management asking him to inspect mail found in a vacant unit. Somebody with authority could move him without force.
That would fit a lure. Caleb believed official documentation solved problems. Tell him there's proof in an empty apartment, and he follows.
Especially if the person speaking already knew about his complaint. That brought investigators back to Janelle Armitage, at least briefly. She said she spent Saturday evening inventorying appliances in vacant units. According to her, she left Quarry Pines around 9, drove home, and called a friend.
Which vacant units?
She gave police 5 numbers. 3 were in Caleb's building. 1 was a ground floor apartment, 2 doors from his.
Did the inventory sheets prove she was there?
They proved. Somebody wrote serial numbers on paper. No tenant saw her. No time clock recorded her hours. She used a salary exemption to work irregularly, and Quarry Pines had no exterior cameras.
The friend's call?
The friend remembered Janelle calling from what sounded like home and discussing a television show. Telephone records placed the call at 10:46. It came from Janelle's mobile phone, not a landline, so it did not establish her location.
That is barely an alibi.
Correct. It established only that she spoke to someone more than 3 hours after Caleb left Bell's Market.
How did Janelle behave in interview?
Cooperative, detailed, and quick to provide records. She supplied the tenant files, master key printout, maintenance schedule, and a list of residents she considered suspicious.
Including Derek.
First name on the list.
Convenient again.
She also told detectives Owen had visited Caleb after their breakup and once shouted in the parking lot. Owen admitted the argument, That made her seem candid.
Or skilled at offering true details that redirected attention.
Before we assign all that control to Janelle, we have to examine her employer. Miles Ketter owned Quarry Pines through a small real estate company. He had access to the administrator system and a strong reason to avoid scrutiny.
Liability.
Unsafe vacant units, incomplete tenant records, untracked MasterCards, and a leasing office that kept copies of identification in unlocked cabinets. If Caleb exposed the mail drops, Miles faced lawsuits, regulatory attention, and potentially the loss of insurance coverage.
Could he be involved in the fraud directly?
Investigators considered it. He had financial problems, Quarry Pines had delinquent taxes, and 2 vendors were suing him for unpaid work. A fraud operation using tenant identities could have produced cash.
Where was he that Saturday?
At a real estate conference in Louisville, hotel entry records, event photographs, credit card charges, and multiple attendees placed him there from Friday afternoon through Sunday morning.
Could he direct Janelle or another employee?
That possibility stayed open for a while, but no communications or money transfers tied him to the applications. His bank records showed financial strain, not unexplained income.
Yet he gave police incomplete records.
He did. Miles withheld several maintenance invoices and minimized how many MasterCards were circulating. He later claimed he feared code violations and civil claims.
Another liar protecting a separate interest?
Exactly. Owen hid relapse and an affair. Miles hid negligence. Derek's record distracted investigators. Multiple people gave incomplete answers, but incomplete answers do not all point to the same crime.
Miles made the murder easier without committing it.
That's the evidence. His sloppy controls created the opportunity. His evasiveness helped preserve it. Then came the search failure that kept Caleb hidden for nearly 15 years. In September of 2011, a former mill contractor told police about a service road trench that had been opened during the weekend Caleb vanished.
Why did he remember it?
Because the trench was supposed to receive new drainage pipe, but the work stalled. He recalled seeing fresh tire impressions near it on Monday morning. He couldn't identify the vehicle.
Police scheduled dogs?
For October 9th, heavy rain delayed the first team. Before the replacement date was confirmed, the property receiver authorized the trench to be filled and the service road paved.
Wait, did anyone know a search was pending?
The detective assigned to coordinate it had left a message with the receiver's office. The project supervisor said that message never reached him. There was no evidence the paving crew was part of a cover-up.
So the concrete explanation is bureaucracy and construction timing.
Yes. No secret force, no impossible disappearance. A search request failed to reach the person operating the equipment, and a scheduled maintenance job buried the evidence deeper.
That is somehow worse.
The trench was filled with imported soil and capped by asphalt. Police took no core samples. By the time anyone reconsidered the location, the mill property was in another bankruptcy proceeding, and Caleb's case had gone cold.
How far was the trench from the warehouse where the sedan appeared?
Just under 4 miles by service roads. From Quarry Pines, the route to the mill took about 12 minutes at night. The warehouse lay on a return path towards State Route 49.
Kill Caleb in a vacant unit, drive him to the trench, leave him there, then abandon his car at the warehouse.
That was one reconstruction. The offender could then return to Quarry Pines using another vehicle, staged near the warehouse, or arrange a pickup.
Any second set of tire tracks?
None preserved. The warehouse lot had been crossed by delivery trucks before police secured it. Again, evidence lost through delay.
What about soil in the sedan?
Vacuum samples were collected but never compared with the mill trench in 2011. Once Caleb's remains were recovered, soil packed into folds of the contractor plastic matched the mineral composition of the imported fill beneath the service road.
Not the warehouse lot.
Correct. The warehouse had crushed limestone and petroleum residue. The plastic carried silty fill with coal ash fragments from the mill site.
So the car was only the final stage.
Yes. Caleb had been transported to the mill before the sedan was abandoned. The blood under the passenger latch showed his body was in that car during at least part of the route.
Did Janelle have any connection to the mill property?
Not one police could prove then. Quarry Pines maintenance contractors had purchased supplies from a yard beside the mill, and one contractor had previously repaired drainage at both properties. Janelle processed invoices so she could have seen job locations and schedules.
Could have.
Isn't the same as new.
Exactly. Miles had the same paperwork. So did maintenance staff. That's why the fraud operation still mattered to me more than the dating history.
The person who chose the trench needed logistical knowledge, not necessarily romantic fixation.
But the person who knew Caleb's routine needed personal observation.
or a written schedule.
Did one exist?
Years later, investigators searched a storage unit connected to Janelle's married name. They recovered copied tenant documents, a portable card encoder, mailbox keys, and several index cards tracking work hours.
Caleb had a card?
His credit union schedule was written by hand. Beside Saturday, May 14th, the notation read, "Market, then home." Another line listed his usual Monday arrival time.
And the encoder could produce tenant cards?
Compatible cards, yes. It connected to a standard computer and could write the credential data used by the Quarry Pine system. Those devices were commercially available, no sophisticated hacking was required.
So every impossible key entry reduces to access, hardware, and a person willing to abuse both.
Exactly. A copied credential, an administrator account, and altered exports. That's the entire mechanism.
When was that storage unit rented?
2013, under Janelle's new married surname. The owner said she rarely visited after 2019, but kept paying automatically. Investigators obtained the warrant after Caleb's remains were identified, and the deoxyribonucleic acid testing pointed back toward Quarry Pines.
Was Caleb's missing keycard there?
No. Neither was his phone. The white cards in storage were blank stock, some encoded and some unused. Several carried credential numbers assigned to former tenants.
That's operational equipment.
Strong evidence of unauthorized card copying and identity fraud. But possession in 2026 did not by itself prove she had that equipment in 2011. Investigators needed older records.
The vendor backup?
That became the break. Quarry Pine's original office terminal had been discarded after the property changed ownership. The case file contained only Janelle's paper export. Cold case detectives contacted the company that manufactured the card system, now operating under a different corporate name.
15 years later, what could possibly remain?
A backup archive created during a software migration. It had been stored on an old server image because the vendor was defending an unrelated contract lawsuit. Nobody preserved it for Caleb's case. It survived because corporate lawyers told technicians not to delete anything.
Accidental preservation.
The opposite of what happened at the trench. One bureaucratic failure buried evidence. Another bureaucracy kept data alive.
How do you authenticate a backup that old?
You don't just open a file and trust it. Examiners verified the server image's creation date, compared its cryptographic integrity values with migration logs, and matched unaffected entries to tenant cards documented elsewhere. They also reconstructed how the Quarry Pines software stored administrator edits.
Could someone at the vendor have changed it later?
There was no evidence of that. The archive was read-only after migration, and the entry structure matched the version of the software installed at Quarry Pines. More importantly, it contained thousands of mundane door events that aligned with maintenance records and tenant statements.
Including Caleb's 811 entry?
Yes, his personal card opened his door at 8:11 on May 14th. That confirmed the paper log was accurate, at least up to the point he came home.
Then what did Janelle remove?
Before we get there, the archive exposed another layer. The administrator could export a selected date range, exclude credential categories, and print the result without leaving an obvious warning on the page.
So corrupted timestamps was a cover story.
A technically plausible one if nobody called the vendor. Janelle hadn't repaired bad data. She had filtered valid data before she printed it.
That's deliberate evidence manipulation.
Yes, and once detectives compared the raw event table with her paper version, they could see exactly which lines were missing.
Was it only Caleb's apartment?
No. Events were removed from 7 doors. Caleb's unit and 6 apartments listed as vacant during the fraud applications.
That connects both sides.
It does. The same filtering category concealed management-level access to Caleb's home and to the suspected mail drops.
How many credentials were involved?
Maintenance cards appeared in the raw archive, but their legitimate work entries also appeared on Janelle's printout. The concealed events came from one administrator credential.
Assigned to a person?
Assigned by name, protected by a password, and used from the office encoder station. The credential had permission to open every apartment, issue replacement cards, and edit export settings.
Marcus, that is no longer an outside fraud crew borrowing a key.
Not if the assignment holds. But administrator credentials can be shared. Property offices are bad about passwords taped beneath keyboards. Investigators had to determine whether the account name identified the user or merely the access level.
Did they?
The vendor archive recorded which workstation created each card and which administrator session approved it. Quarry Pines had 2 office computers. One belonged to the property manager, the other sat at Janelle's desk.
There we go.
The concealed credential was activated from Janelle's workstation. Her account password opened the session. Entries occurred on days she was scheduled to work, including several evenings when she said she remained alone in the office.
Could another employee sit at her desk and use her password?
Possible in isolation, harder across months. The archive also showed card encoding commands issued minutes before some door entries. A replacement card would be written at Janelle's desk, then used on Caleb's unit.
She wasn't just carrying a permanent master.
Right. She could create temporary copies, use them, then deactivate them. That reduced the chance a routine audit would show one MasterCard moving through every door.
That's preparation. She understood the audit trail well enough to fragment it.
And she understood what detectives were likely to request. They asked for master key activity. She gave them a report that omitted administrator-issued temporary credentials.
The wording of the request became the hiding place.
That happens. If you let the custodian of a system interpret your evidence demand, you may receive the version that protects the custodian. The proper move was a forensic acquisition of the entire database.
Which they never did.
No. They left the source machine in the office with the person whose access they were supposed to examine.
Walk me through the pattern before Caleb vanished.
March 7th, the day of his first complaint, there was an administrator entry at 1:26 in the afternoon. Caleb was at work. March 18th, when he found the blank sleeve, there had been an entry 43 minutes before he returned home.
Exact correspondence.
Then the activity increased after April 26, when Caleb flagged the applications. 6 entries occurred over the next 16 days. 2 were into his apartment, 4 were into vacant units connected to suspicious mail.
That gives your fraud theory a surge point.
Yes. Once Caleb recognized the addresses, the access pattern intensified. That looked like operational risk management, checking what mail had arrived, determining what Caleb knew, and searching for his notes.
But March 7th still comes first.
It does. I can't force the chronology. The intrusion pattern began before the documented fraud alert.
Which means the offender's attention was already on Caleb.
I'm updating. The fraud gave the offender a reason to escalate, but it didn't create the access relationship.
And I'm updating too. The spike after April 26th is too clean to dismiss. Whatever control she exercised over Caleb, exposure of the mail drop scheme made the situation urgent.
That's the intersection. Personal surveillance established the means. Financial exposure supplied the deadline. Then examiners moved past May 14th.
The entries after Caleb was gone.
21 of them. The first occurred at 6:18 on Sunday morning, 12 minutes before the delivery driver reported Caleb's sedan behind the tire warehouse. The last occurred on June 28th.
All from the same credential?
Everyone. Janelle Armitage's administrator credential.
There it is. The stalker was inside the management office.
You were right about that. Specifically right. The repeated home entries were not an outside fraud operator using a borrowed card. They were tied to the former dating partner who controlled Caleb's building access.
And you were right about what forced the escalation. The same credential opened the vacant unit mail drops after Caleb flagged them. She wasn't stalking him in a vacuum. Caleb's fraud work threatened the operation.
The raw database changed the case. Janelle was no longer the cooperative witness who handed police the keys. She was the person whose account opened Caleb's apartment before his complaints, after his fraud discovery, and 21 times after his disappearance.
Which leaves one urgent question.
What was she doing in there each time, and what had she already removed before police finally searched it? The timing told them some of it. 9 entries occurred before detectives searched Caleb's apartment on June 2nd. 12 occurred after the search, when police released the unit back to management, and Caleb's family began arranging his belongings.
She kept returning after police had been inside.
Yes. Several entries lasted less than 4 minutes. Others were separated by visits to the leasing office or one of the vacant mail drop units. Janelle would open Caleb's door, return to her workstation, encode a temporary card, and then enter a vacant apartment.
Moving between both sides of her problem.
That was the prosecution's interpretation. Caleb's apartment contained evidence of what he knew. The vacant units contained mail and financial documents tying her to the fraud. She was checking both while deciding what needed to disappear.
And the June entries?
After learning police had taken Caleb's computer and notebook, she went back to see what they had left. In the agreed statement supporting her guilty plea, Janelle admitted removing misdirected mail, one handwritten notebook page, and a folder containing copies of Caleb's complaints.
The complaint folder.
The person accused of mishandling his access complaints had taken Caleb's copies of those complaints from his home.
That is not cleanup alone. That's control of the story.
She missed the grocery receipt because it was folded beneath a detergent wrapper in the trash. She also left the door chain and most of Caleb's notebook. That sounds careless, but offenders don't know which ordinary objects will become decisive 15 years later.
Especially if the first detectives never ask for the matching database.
Bell's Market retained loyalty records longer than purchase video. After the cold case team found Caleb's original receipt, they requested every transaction associated with his telephone number.
The second purchase.
Monday, May 16th at 6:28 in the evening. Caleb's loyalty account was used to buy coffee, soup, apples, and mailing envelopes, several items resembling his purchase from Saturday night.
Manufactured routine.
That was the motive. Janelle wanted a commercial record suggesting Caleb was alive and still shopping after his car was recovered. She manually entered his telephone number at checkout and paid with a prepaid debit card.
How did that lead back to her?
The prepaid card had been activated 2 days earlier using Janelle's personal debit card. The retailer kept only a payment token, but investigators matched that token through the card processor's archived fraud records.
She built one trail and exposed another.
Exactly. She understood the store's loyalty system better than she understood payment retention. No advanced technology, just linked corporate records that the original investigators failed to subpoena.
Did the Monday purchase include anything she actually needed?
Probably. She kept the groceries. The staging was in attaching Caleb's number to them. That gave her plausible activity without risking his bank card or appearing on his accounts.
And it explains the envelopes in both purchases. Caleb bought his because he intended to mail documentation. Janelle bought hers to mimic the first basket.
That was how prosecutors presented it. She had seen the Saturday receipt during one of her entries, or she had watched him at Bell's Market closely enough to reproduce part of the purchase.
The storage card said, market, then home.
Right.
Her other cards tracked work shifts and arrival times. This one followed his final errand.
Hold on.
You caught it.
The door chain. Caleb didn't make a random grocery trip that night. He bought a barrier because somebody kept entering. Janelle's note wasn't simply recording his Saturday habit. She was monitoring the safety response caused by her own intrusion and waiting for him to return before he could install it.
That's the personal piece. She wanted to know when his fear changed his behavior.
And the financial piece supplied the deadline. By that Saturday, Caleb had envelopes ready, partial applicant names in his notebook, and a new chain on the counter. If he mailed copies outside Quarry Pines, Janelle could no longer control the only record. The full twist was that Janelle had never failed to protect Caleb from an unknown intruder. She was the intruder. She had used vacant apartments, copied tenant credentials, stolen mail, and lease file identities to generate fraudulent applications. When Caleb connected those addresses, she used her management authority to lure him into the vacant unit 2 doors from his own.
The apartment on her appliance inventory.
Unit 12. Janelle told Caleb management had found mail matching one of the names in his notebook. She said he needed to identify it before she contacted the owner.
That offer hits every part of Caleb's personality. Evidence, official cooperation, a chance to stop somebody being defrauded.
He followed her without installing the chain. Inside Unit 12, she struck him twice from behind with a framing hammer. When he remained alive, she cut his neck with a utility knife.
Awful.
The weapon choices were practical, not ritualistic. Both tools were commonly stored in vacant units during repairs. She chose an empty ground floor apartment because there were no tenants to hear the attack, and the patio allowed her to move Caleb to his sedan without crossing the central walkway.
Why the second form of violence?
To ensure he could not recover or identify her. The blunt force attack disabled him. The neck wound made the killing final. Her plea admission was specific on that point. Silence was the purpose.
Did she wrap him at Quarry Pines?
Partially. She pulled contractor plastic from a maintenance supply closet and used it to contain blood while moving him. That explains why Caleb's blood was concentrated beneath the passenger's seatbelt housing rather than spread across the visible upholstery.
She buckled him in?
Yes, she placed him in the passenger seat, wrapped but upright enough to pass as a sleeping or intoxicated passenger if another driver saw the car. The belt pressed blood into the latch assembly, where wiping the exposed surfaces couldn't reach it.
That tiny protected space preserved the truth.
It did. She drove first to the mill. Janelle knew the service road trench remained open because she processed an invoice from a contractor who worked both the mill property and Quarry Pines.
There's the local knowledge.
She placed Caleb in the trench, covered him with loose fill, and expected the scheduled drainage project to bury him permanently. Then she drove his sedan to the tire warehouse, wiped the common touch points, removed his telephone and keycard, and walked to a second vehicle she had left nearby before approaching Caleb.
So the second vehicle wasn't a mystery pickup.
No. A compact utility vehicle registered to Quarry Pines was available to management that weekend. Mileage records Janelle supplied had been rounded down. Fuel card data later showed the vehicle was filled early Sunday morning near the warehouse.
And the text to Owen?
Sent from Caleb's phone after the attack. Janelle knew Owen had asked for money and that their argument was recent. She wrote that Caleb needed space because it supported two possibilities: voluntary withdrawal or an emotional conflict with Owen.
She used a real disagreement as camouflage.
Precisely. Remember Janelle's early statement about Owen shouting in the parking lot? Detectives treated that as helpful witness information. It wasn't neutral witness information. It was the killer supplying the investigation with a suspect she had already framed through Caleb's phone.
And her list put Derek first because his stolen identity already pointed away from management.
Every name she offered had a concrete diversionary value. Owen gave police jealousy, Derek gave them criminal history, Grant gave them internal access at the credit union, Miles gave them financial pressure and negligent records.
While Janelle occupied the safest role in the room, the cooperative employee.
She handed detectives keys, files, and filtered logs that let her learn what they wanted while controlling what they received.
Information dominance. That's the behavioral core. Her stalking wasn't romantic longing in disguise. It was possession through knowledge, his work schedule, his mail, his complaints, his shopping, his fear.
On August 21st, 2025, drainage crews finally cut through the old asphalt. An excavator exposed black contractor plastic about 5 feet beneath the service road. Work stopped. Marlow Bend police secured the site, and a forensic anthropology team recovered nearly complete remains.
After all that time, what could the autopsy still establish confidently?
Dental identification came first. The skull preserved 2 depressed fractures at the rear. Cut marks across the cervical vertebrae supported a deep incised wound to the neck. Those findings aligned with the blood in the passenger seat and later with Janelle's plea statement.
And the soil fixed the burial location.
Soil trapped inside folds of the plastic contained the same coal ash fragments, silty clay, and industrial aggregate found beneath the service road. It did not match the warehouse lot or Quarry Pines landscaping.
What about the plastic itself?
Common contractor sheeting, chemically degraded but intact enough to preserve strips of gray adhesive tape. Examiners sampled the sticky side, where skin cells can remain protected from water, handling, and surface contamination.
Caleb's deoxyribonucleic acid would be expected.
It was present, but the mixture also contained a female contributor.
How clean was that profile?
The first testing produced a partial mixture. Advanced sequencing separated Caleb's stronger profile from the lower-level female contribution. Analysts repeated the extraction from 2 different tape sections and obtained consistent results.
Then they needed Janelle's sample.
Investigators initially collected discarded material from outside her Indiana home, a drinking cup placed in her household trash. That produced an investigative association, not the final courtroom comparison. They obtained a warrant and took a direct cheek swab.
Match?
Consistent across every usable location in the female profile. The statistical weight was greater than 1 in several trillion among unrelated individuals.
Could she claim she touched the plastic at work?
She did. Property managers handle contractor materials. That explanation might account for skin cells on an exposed edge. It did not comfortably explain her deoxyribonucleic acid beneath overlapping tape wrapped around Caleb's body.
Especially beside the hidden access records.
Deoxyribonucleic acid gave them contact with the burial wrapping. The vendor backup gave them repeated unauthorized access. The loyalty record gave them staging after the murder. Together, those independent evidence streams defeated innocent transfer explanations. The storage unit warrant followed. Investigators found the portable encoder, copied leases, former tenants' identification documents, mailbox keys, and Caleb's handwritten schedule card.
Any direct proceeds from the fraud?
Records inside the unit included prepaid card account numbers and loan correspondence connected to the Quarry Pines addresses. Prosecutors reconstructed at least 47 fraudulent applications between 2009 and 2012. 22 produced funds or usable credit.
How much?
Just over $280,000 in attempted credit, with approximately $96,000 actually obtained. Janelle used some to cover personal debt and some to keep delinquent Quarry Pines expenses from drawing Miles's attention.
So even the employer benefited indirectly.
Indirectly and unknowingly, according to the evidence. Miles was negligent, evasive, and willing to accept unexplained bookkeeping adjustments because they helped the property. Investigators found no proof he knew those funds came from stolen identities.
Janelle's motive was money first, then preservation.
Money built the scheme. Control maintained it, murder prevented exposure. Those motives reinforced each other rather than competing.
That's where both of our early readings were incomplete. I saw the intimate violations and wanted to place the fraud behind them. You saw the fraud and wanted to make the stalking a tool. It was both from the beginning.
Agreed. On February 6, 2026, Janelle was arrested at her home in Indiana. She initially denied entering Caleb's apartment outside official duties and repeated the old claim that the Quarry Pines system corrupted timestamps.
Even after they showed her the archive?
She suggested somebody had used her password. Investigators then walked her through the workstation identifiers, encoding commands, vacant unit entries, and the payment token from Bell's Market.
One record at a time.
That's how a good confrontation works. You don't dump the whole case on the table and invite a global denial. You establish a claim, test it against one record, close that exit, and move to the next.
Did she confess in the room?
Not fully. She admitted the identity fraud and unauthorized entries, but requested an attorney when detectives asked how her deoxyribonucleic acid reached the protected side of the burial tape.
Sensible legally. Devastating evidentially.
Her admissions placed her inside the access scheme. The forensic evidence placed her with the wrapping. Her attorneys later negotiated a plea that avoided a capital prosecution and required a detailed factual admission. On April 17, Janelle pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, kidnapping, and multiple identity fraud charges. The kidnapping count reflected the deception used to move Caleb from his home into Unit 12, where she prevented him from leaving.
Did she address his family?
Briefly, she said she was sorry for what she had taken and acknowledged that Caleb discovered the fraud because he was trying to protect other people. Denise Doran did not accept the apology.
Understandably.
The court imposed life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, plus consecutive terms for kidnapping and identity fraud. The judge also ordered restitution to the surviving identity theft victims, though recovery is expected to be limited.
And Owen?
Formally cleared in the public statement announcing the plea. So were Grant, Derek, and Miles in relation to Caleb's murder?
Derek deserved that in writing.
He did. The department acknowledged that investigators had treated him as a likely offender when the available jail and application records showed he was a fraud victim. After sentencing, Denise spoke publicly one final time.
Caleb believed that if he wrote everything down and gave it to the right people, they would protect him. They did not. But what he wrote survived her, and it helped bring him home to us.
That lands hard.
Because Caleb did many things right. He photographed the apartment, he recorded unit numbers, he warned a coworker, he contacted management, he saved a receipt without meaning to.
The failure wasn't that he lacked awareness.
No. The failure was that the person receiving his complaints was the offender, and the detectives trusted her custody of the records. Once that happened, Caleb's careful documentation was filtered through the very system he was documenting.
That's what I'm left with. We tell people to report stalking, preserve details, and use official channels. All good advice. But an official channel is only protective if somebody independently verifies the person controlling it.
Particularly where keys, housing, employment, or medical access are involved. If the complaint concerns unauthorized entry, never ask the suspected access custodian to summarize their own logs. Seize the raw data, contact the vendor, audit every credential holder.
Was anyone disciplined for the original investigation?
Both lead detectives had retired before the case reopened. Marlowe Ben commissioned an external review, which identified failures in digital evidence preservation, tenant canvassing, and suspect prioritization. No criminal misconduct was found.
No conspiracy, just choices.
Bad choices with cumulative consequences. They accepted Janelle's technical explanation. They failed to contact Evelyn. They missed the bowling alley archive. They didn't subpoena the loyalty history. They allowed the Mills search request to drift between offices.
Each one sounds survivable alone.
Together they gave Janelle 15 years.
And that matters more than calling the case unlucky. Unlucky erases decisions.
Correct. The key system functioned, the store database functioned, the seatbelt latch preserved blood. The burial tape preserved deoxyribonucleic acid. Human beings failed to connect those records.
Until other human beings did.
That's also worth saying. The cold case team rebuilt the evidence chain without pretending the original chain was sound. They authenticated each surviving record independently, then tested the records against one another.
Caleb was finally buried by his family?
In Columbus, near his father. His sister placed a small wooden plane beside the flowers, a reference to the workshop he intended to build.
The future in pieces.
Yes. His savings account remained nearly untouched for 14 years before a court released it to his estate. His family used part of it to fund fraud prevention assistance for older credit union customers.
That feels true to him.
Caleb spent his working life noticing when small details didn't belong together. Vacant addresses, moving mail, names arriving before tenants. The same discipline that put him in danger eventually identified his killer.
Not because one clue performed a miracle.
No miracles. A blood deposit protected by plastic, adhesive shielding skin cells, a server preserved for litigation, a retailer retaining payment tokens, concrete systems each holding one fragment.
And a white keycard that never should have crossed his door.
The central question was, who kept entering Caleb's apartment after he was dead? The answer was Janelle Armitage, using the authority Caleb trusted enough to report the intrusions to her.
She listened to his fear as an employee, then exploited it as an offender.
She used his home to monitor the investigation, his phone to redirect suspicion, his loyalty number to manufacture life, and his apartment records to erase herself.
But she could only edit the copy police requested.
She could not edit the vendor archive, she could not reach the blood beneath the lat, and she could not remove her deoxyribonucleic acid from beneath tape buried under a road.
That's the piece I'll remember. Control can feel complete to the offender because they own the immediate environment. But evidence exists in systems they don't know to fear.
Provided investigators look for it.
And provided they don't confuse cooperation with innocence. Caleb bought a chain. The danger already held the master.
The key log closed what bad police work left open.
This case left me angry at how easily authority can imitate safety. Next week brings a file that unsettled me in a completely different way. Like and subscribe so you're with us when we open it.